Do you ever wonder how far your money could stretch back in the 1970s? The kind of prices that would make you question reality today? Back then, a few dollars could fill your gas tank, feed your family, and maybe even buy you a movie night. A grocery trip didn't feel like a financial battle, and owning a home wasn't just a dream. It was expected. Life was simpler, costs were lower, and people actually saved money without trying too hard. This isn't just about numbers. It's a glimpse into a world where everyday living didn't drain your wallet. So, let's take a step back in time and see just how cheap life really was in the 1970s. Number 25. Scented Magic Markers. Scented magic markers cost pennies and came in packs that smelled like a candy store. Each color was labeled by flavor: cherry, licorice, blueberry, lemon. Kids passed them around classrooms, scribbling in workbooks, and holding the tip close for a big whiff. The problem was, the scents weren't from actual fruit, but from chemical solvents like toluene and xylene, industrial-grade fumes more at home in paint shops than second-grade classrooms. Teachers joked about kids getting high on markers, and it wasn't always a joke. While not strong enough to cause real harm in casual use, repeated sniffing could cause dizziness, nausea, and in high doses, serious neurological issues. Eventually, formulas were reformulated with kid-safe alternatives. But in the 1970s, the only warning label read "Do not ingest," which didn't stop anyone from coloring their nose red and calling themselves Rudolph. These markers represented an era when consumer safety was an afterthought, when a dollar could buy hours of entertainment, toxic or not. For a couple quarters, you got a full set and nobody asked questions. Number 24. Day-old bread. The day-old bread store was a hidden treasure hunt if you knew where to look. Not a bakery, but shelves of discounted loaves, bent buns, and broken bagels lined up like misfit toys. You grabbed what you could: white bread, wheat bread, hamburger rolls with one smashed side. You had to check for mold, but you also found surprises like honey wheat, raisin swirl, hot dog buns in winter. The smell was amazing, the prices even better. You could get 5 loaves for the cost of 1, sometimes for just $2 or $3 total. At home, you froze most of it, ate the rest fast, toasted it, buttered it, grilled it. If it was dry, you made stuffing. If too far gone, breadcrumbs. Nothing was wasted. These stores thrived in working-class neighborhoods, serving families who understood that freshness was a luxury they couldn't afford. The bread might have been yesterday's news, but it kept your lunchbox full. The day-old store wasn't fancy, but it was practical, dependable, and most importantly, cheap enough that stretching a budget didn't mean going hungry. Number 23. Off-brand cereal in a bag. Off-brand cereal in a bag wasn't cool, but it was affordable, usually under $1 for enough to last a week. No cartoon mascots, no box, no toy surprise, just a giant plastic sack of crunchy shapes that looked almost, but not quite, like the name Bran. Fruity Circles instead of Fruit Loops, Corn Crunch instead of Corn Pops, Marshmallow Magic instead of Lucky Charms. Every flavor was slightly off. You poured it into a bowl with powdered milk and called it breakfast. It got soggy fast, stuck to your teeth, but you still ate 2 bowls and called it a good morning. Moms bought it because it lasted a week and cost less than a movie ticket. Kids ate it because it was sweet, kind of. It came in huge bags that barely fit in the pantry, clipped shut with a clothespin and prayers for freshness. The marshmallows crumbled, the flakes broke, but it fed the whole house and nobody dared waste it. In the 1970s, off-brand cereal wasn't shameful. It was smart. If you were lucky, it even came in chocolate. Number 22. Boxed macaroni and cheese. Boxed macaroni and cheese was a budget strategy masquerading as dinner. The box cost less than $1 and could feed an entire family if you got creative. Elbow noodles, a packet of neon orange powder, and a splash of milk if you had it. If not, waterwork. Maybe some margarine, maybe not. You stirred until it turned thick, hot, and just cheesy enough. It wasn't gourmet, but it was fast, filling, and guaranteed nobody would complain much. Sometimes you added chopped hot dogs or canned tuna. Other times it was just mac and cheese and a prayer. The box said serves 4, but you could stretch it to 6 if desperate. It wasn't about flavor, but about making sure everyone got a scoop. The powder never fully dissolved, leaving orange specks that stuck to spoons, but that was part of the experience. Kids didn't know they were eating budget food, they just knew they liked it. Parents knew they were feeding their children for less than the cost of a gallon of gas. You could buy 3 boxes for $1 on sale, and that meant 3 dinners sorted. Number 21. Canned Spam. Canned Spam was the meat that needed no fridge and barely needed a reason, costing around 75 cents per can. You popped the lid with a key or your finger and slid out a jelly-covered block of mystery. You sliced it thin, fried it hard, drowned it in mustard. It was salty, greasy, and so processed it almost squeaked, but it was meat. It filled sandwiches, topped rice, bulked up macaroni. You flipped it like pancakes on a hot skillet and called it dinner. Some people said it was gross. Others called it a lifesaver. You probably called it fine. It wasn't your favorite, but it was there when hungry. Spam Spam came in food boxes, sat on sale shelves, and stayed in pantries for months. It was cheap, shelf-stable, and worked. That was the whole point. You weren't buying sirloin, you were feeding 4 people with 1 can. The versatility was undeniable. Spam and eggs, Spam sandwiches, Spam fried rice, Spam casserole. Some people hated it, others made it a tradition. But if you were broke in the 1970s, Spam was meat, and that was enough. Number 20. Powdered milk. Powdered milk was never a treat, it was a chore. You mixed it in a plastic pitcher, hoping the lumps would disappear. They never did. It smelled like chalk and tasted like a dare. If you drank it warm, that was punishment, not a beverage. But it got poured into cereal, added to mashed potatoes, stirred into baking mixes like it belonged, because it had to. Milk was expensive, sometimes 60 cents a gallon when fresh. Powdered milk came in giant paper envelopes and lasted forever. Not because you loved it, but because it was always there. You stirred it with a spoon until your wrist hurt, then stirred more. Your mom would say, "Let it sit. It tastes better cold." And somehow she was right, kind of. It was used to stretch real milk when you were lucky enough to have some. Half and half wasn't a fancy coffee blend. It was how you survived a dry week. Powdered milk showed up in food pantry boxes, school kitchens, battered community centers. It was dependable, disliked, and necessary. Today it's mostly used for baking, but if you were poor in the 1970s, you drank it straight and learned to stop complaining. Number 19. Generic brand soda. Generic brand soda came in plain white cans with black block letters that simply said cola or orange or lemon lime. No branding, no personality, just carbonated. Sugar water at a fraction of the price. A 6-pack might cost 69 cents when Coca-Cola was pushing $2. The taste was close enough that kids didn't complain much, and parents didn't care if they did. It was cold, it was sweet, and it washed down peanut butter sandwiches just fine. The generic soda aisle was a testament to 1970s pragmatism, when supermarkets started offering no-frills alternatives to name brands. These weren't knockoffs trying to fool anyone. They were honest, cheap alternatives for people who couldn't justify spending extra for a logo. Some tasted metallic, some too sweet, some flat, even when freshly opened. But none of that mattered when you were thirsty and broke. For families counting every nickel, choosing generic soda over Pepsi meant having enough left over for ground beef or bread. Number 18. Jiffy baking mixes. Jiffy baking mixes were tiny blue and white boxes that cost a quarter and delivered miracles. Cornbread, muffins, cake, biscuits, all for loose change. You dumped the powder into a bowl, added an egg and some milk if you had it, water if you didn't, and stirred. 10 minutes in the oven and you had something that smelled like home. The portions were small but sufficient. One box made enough cornbread to accompany a pot of beans, enough muffins for breakfast, enough cake for a modest dessert. The mixes were shelf-stable, idiot-proof, and tasted better than they had any right to for the price. Mothers stretched meals by serving Jiffy cornbread alongside whatever protein they could afford, making dinner feel more complete. The brand understood its audience, people who needed quick, cheap, reliable results without fancy ingredients or complicated instructions. $1 could buy 4 boxes, meaning 4 different meals enhanced with baked goods. That kind of value built loyalty that lasted generations. Number 17. Bulk rice and beans. Bulk rice and beans were the foundation of survival cooking, costing mere pennies per pound when bought in large quantities. A 10-pound bag of rice cost around $1. A similar bag of dried beans, even less. Together, they provided complete protein, carbohydrates, and enough calories to keep a family functioning. The preparation was simple. Soak the beans overnight, boil them until soft, cook the rice in whatever liquid you had. Season with salt, maybe some onion or garlic if you could spare it. This combination appeared on dinner tables across economic and cultural lines, from southern kitchens to immigrant households. The beauty was in the versatility. Rice and beans could be breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They could be spiced differently each time, mixed with whatever vegetables or scraps of meat were available. They filled you up, stuck to your ribs, and cost almost nothing. A month's worth of rice and beans might cost $5, freeing up the rest of the grocery budget for milk, eggs, or occasionally meat. Number 16. Hot dogs. Hot dogs were cheap protein that asked no questions and took no prisoners, often sold in packs of 10 for under $1. They were made of things nobody wanted to think about too hard, pressed into casings and boiled, fried, or grilled into submission. Kids loved them, parents tolerated them, and budgets accommodated them. You ate them on cheap white bread buns if you had them, regular bread if you didn't. You dressed them with mustard, ketchup, relish, or nothing at all. A single pack could feed a family dinner with some creativity. Hot dogs cut into mac and cheese, sliced into baked beans, wrapped in crescent rolls for pigs in a blanket. The versatility rivaled Spam, but with better PR. Hot dogs appeared at every birthday party, every summer cookout, every quick meal when nobody had energy to cook properly. They required no skill, no recipe, just heat and hunger. Parents knew they weren't serving prime rib, they were serving something, and something beat nothing every single time. Number 15. Ramen noodles. Ramen noodles were imported poverty cuisine that cost a dime per package and became an American staple. You boiled water, dropped in the brick of crinkly noodles, added the flavor packet of concentrated salt and MSG, and called it soup. It was ready in 3 minutes, required no skill, and tasted exactly the same whether you were a college student or a struggling parent. The portion was small, but the sodium count was astronomical, leaving you feeling full and bloated simultaneously. The flavors were limited: chicken, beef, shrimp, oriental. None tasted particularly like their names, but all tasted like survival. Some people dressed them up with eggs, vegetables, hot sauce, turning the bare bones base into something approaching a meal. Most people ate them straight, slurping the broth and trying not to think about nutritional value. When the grocery budget ran out midweek, ramen bridged the gap until payday. Was it healthy? No. Was it filling? Barely. Was it cheap enough to matter? Absolutely. Number 14. Margarine. Margarine wasn't butter, and everyone knew it, but it cost half as much and did most of the same jobs. It came in plastic tubs or rectangular boxes, bright yellow, and suspiciously uniform in texture. You spread it on toast, melted it on vegetables, used it in baking recipes that called for butter. The taste was flat, slightly chemical, with a plasticky aftertaste if you paid too much attention. But you learned not to pay attention. Margarine was practical. It didn't require refrigeration the way butter did, meaning it lasted longer and survived power outages. It cost around 40 cents per pound when butter pushed 80 cents or more. That price difference meant families could afford to have spreadable fat on the table every day instead of rationing butter for special occasions. Some margarines came in white blocks with orange dye packets, requiring you to mash and knead the color in yourself, a bizarre ritual that kids sometimes found entertaining. The health claims were aggressive: lower cholesterol, heart healthy, better than butter. Most of that was marketing, but people believed it because they needed to. Number 13. Canned vegetables. Canned vegetables were survival rations disguised as side dishes, and they cost next to nothing. Green beans, corn, peas, carrots, all swimming in salty water and softer than they had any right to be. You popped the top, drained the liquid, heated them on the stove with a pat of margarine if you were feeling fancy. They tasted like tin and disappointment, but they were vegetables, and that counted for something. A can cost maybe 25 cents, sometimes less on sale. You could stock a pantry for $5 and have enough vegetables to last 2 weeks. The nutrition was debatable, most vitamins cooked away during processing, but the fiber remained, and the appearance of balanced meals mattered. Mothers served canned vegetables because fresh produce was expensive and spoiled fast. You couldn't afford to waste money on lettuce that went brown or tomatoes that rotted. Canned goods were insurance. They sat on shelves for years, ready whenever you needed them. Were they good? Not really. Were they necessary? Absolutely. Number 12. Peanut butter. Peanut butter was the workhorse of the poor kitchen, a jar of protein that cost $1 and lasted forever. You spread it on bread, mixed it with jelly if you had any, ate it straight from the jar with a spoon when nobody was looking. It was filling, calorie-dense, and required no preparation. Kids ate peanut butter sandwiches for lunch every single day and never complained because complaining meant you didn't eat. The generic brands were grainier, separated more, required stirring that left your arm tired. But they cost half what Jif or Skippy did, and half mattered when you were counting coins. Peanut butter showed up in cookies, sauces, Thai-inspired dishes that weren't quite authentic but tasted good enough. It bulked up oatmeal, topped crackers, filled celery sticks for a snack that felt almost healthy. A single jar could provide dozens of meals, making it one of the most efficient purchases a struggling family could make. The shelf life was practically infinite, the versatility unmatched, and the comfort undeniable. Number 11. Potatoes. Potatoes were the ultimate budget stretcher, 5 or 10 pounds for $1 depending on the season. You could bake them, boil them, mash them, fry them, turn them into soup or casserole or hash. They filled you up like nothing else, starchy and heavy and satisfying in a way that lasted hours. A potato didn't require much: some salt, maybe butter or margarine if you had it, sour cream if you were lucky. Most of the time it was just potato, plain and honest. Families bought potatoes in massive bags and stored them in cool, dark places, basements or closets, where they'd last for months. When meat was scarce, potatoes became the main course. When vegetables were unavailable, potatoes filled the gap. They were reliable, versatile, and impossibly cheap. Baked potato night meant everyone got full without breaking the bank. Mashed potatoes stretched a small amount of milk and margarine into a side dish that felt generous. Fried potatoes used up the cooking oil and created something crispy and delicious from almost nothing. Number 10. White bread. White bread was the foundation of cheap eating, a loaf for 35 cents that provided sandwiches for a week. It was soft, squishy, nutritionally empty, and absolutely essential. You made peanut butter sandwiches, bologna sandwiches, butter and sugar sandwiches when times were truly desperate. You turned it into toast, French toast, bread pudding, stuffing. You used the heels for everything because wasting food wasn't an option. White bread lacked the nutrition of wheat or whole grain, but it cost less, and kids preferred it. The softness made it easy to chew, easy to swallow, easy to pack into. Generic store brands were even cheaper, sometimes too loaves for 50 cents. You bought in bulk, froze half, and rationed the rest. Bread was carbs, and carbs were energy, and energy kept you going even when the protein ran out. It wasn't fancy, wasn't healthy, wasn't what nutritionists recommended, but it was there, and it was cheap, and that made it essential. Number 9. Eggs. Eggs were cheap protein that came in cardboard cartons, a dozen for around 60 cents. You scrambled them, fried them, boiled them, baked them into casseroles and quiches when you were trying to stretch other ingredients. Eggs were breakfast, lunch, or dinner, depending on what else you had available. They mixed into fried rice, topped ramen, filled sandwiches, bound meatloaf together. A single egg provided enough protein to matter, enough fat to satisfy, enough versatility to never get boring. Poor families bought eggs by the flat, 2 or 3 dozen at a time, storing them in the fridge and using them strategically throughout the week. Scrambled eggs and toast was dinner on hard nights. Egg salad sandwiches were lunch when the deli meat ran out. Hard-boiled eggs were snacks that traveled well and required no heating. The nutrition was legitimate, the preparation was simple, and the cost was manageable, even on the tightest budgets. Number 8. Oatmeal. Oatmeal was breakfast for pennies, a huge canister that lasted months and cost maybe $1. You boiled water, stirred in the oats, waited 5 minutes, and had a hot meal that stuck with you until lunch. It was bland, gummy, and absolutely filling. You added sugar if you had it, brown sugar if you were lucky, cinnamon and raisins if it was a special day. Most days it was just oatmeal, maybe with powdered milk stirred in for extra calories. The beauty of oatmeal was its efficiency. A single serving cost maybe 3 cents. A family of 4 could eat breakfast for under a quarter. That kind of economy mattered when you were counting every dollar. Oatmeal was also forgiving. You could make it thick or thin, sweet or savory, doctor it up, or eat it plain. Kids complained but ate it anyway because complaining didn't change what was in the bowl. Parents ate it because it was filling and cheap and kept everyone functional until the next meal. Number 7. Chicken leg quarters. Chicken leg quarters were the cheapest meat you could buy, sometimes 29 cents per pound when other cuts cost twice that. You got a drumstick and thigh attached, skin on, bone in, fatty and dark, and absolutely delicious when cooked right. You baked them, fried them, threw them in soup, grilled them on charcoal if you had access. The dark meat was more forgiving than chicken breast, harder to dry out, more flavorful even without seasoning. A single bag of leg quarters could provide protein for multiple meals. You ate the meat fresh the first night, picked the bones for soup stock the second night, used every scrap because wasting was unthinkable. The skin crisped up beautifully, the fat rendered out and flavored everything it touched. These weren't the fancy cuts, they were the working class cuts, the ones people bought because they needed meat but couldn't afford much. They required skill to cook well, but even mediocre preparation resulted in something edible. Number 6. Hamburger Helper. Hamburger Helper was a box of dried pasta and powdered sauce mix that cost around 80 cents and promised to stretch a pound of ground beef into dinner for 6. You browned the meat, added the contents of the box, some water, and waited for everything to congeal into something that resembled a meal. It tasted like salt and nostalgia, processed and familiar in equal measure. The varieties were endless: beef stroganoff, cheeseburger macaroni, lasagna, tuna helper, chicken helper. Every flavor had its fans and its critics, but everyone agreed it worked. A pound of ground beef cost maybe $1.50. The helper box added bulk, turned that meat into something substantial. You could feed a family for under $3 total, which in the 1970s was economical enough to matter. Was it good? Not particularly. Was it convenient? Absolutely. Did it keep people fed? Every single night. Number 5. Canned tuna. Canned tuna was protein from the sea, shelf-stable and cheap, usually around 50 cents per can. You drained the water or oil, flaked the fish into a bowl, mixed it with mayonnaise and relish if you had them, and made tuna salad sandwiches that lasted for days. You added it to macaroni and cheese, mixed it into casseroles, spread it on crackers for a snack that felt almost sophisticated. Tuna was reliable. It never spoiled sitting on the shelf, it didn't require refrigeration until open, and it provided legitimate protein when meat was too expensive. Some people loved it, others tolerated it. Nobody wasted it. A single can could make lunch for 2 people or bulk up a dinner that needed more substance. Tuna noodle casserole was a staple. Noodles, canned tuna, cream of mushroom soup, some frozen peas if you had them, topped with crushed crackers and baked until bubbly. It fed 6 people for under $2. Number 4. Pancakes from scratch. Pancakes from scratch were weekend breakfast magic that cost almost nothing. Flour, baking powder, a little sugar, an egg, milk if you had it, water if you didn't. You mixed it in a bowl, heated a skillet, poured circles of batter, and flipped them when bubbles formed. A single batch could feed a family for maybe 50 cents total. You served them with margarine and syrup if you could afford it. Margarine and sugar if you could, plain if times were truly hard. Kids loved pancakes because they were sweet and fun and felt special, even when they were the cheapest meal possible. Parents loved them because the ingredients were pantry pantry staples that lasted forever. Flour came in huge bags. Baking powder lasted for months. Eggs were cheap, and milk could be stretched with powdered milk. Pancakes for dinner was a thing, not just breakfast. When the grocery money ran out before payday, pancakes saved the day. Number 3. Grilled cheese sandwiches. Grilled cheese sandwiches were comfort food that required 3 ingredients: bread, cheese, and margarine. You buttered the bread, placed a slice of cheese between 2 pieces, and fried it in a pan until golden and melted. It was simple, satisfying, and impossibly cheap. 2 sandwiches cost maybe 25 cents to make. You ate them with canned tomato soup if you had it, alone if you didn't. The cheese was usually American, individually wrapped slices that cost less than block cheese and melted perfectly. Government cheese worked even better if you had access to it. The bread was white, cheap, squishy. The margarine was whatever was on sale. None of it was fancy. All of it was delicious. Grilled cheese was what you made when you had nothing else, when creativity ran out and energy was low. It was quick enough for lunch, substantial enough for dinner, comforting enough to make hard days feel slightly better. Number 2. Spaghetti with tomato sauce. Spaghetti with tomato sauce was the ultimate budget meal. Dinner for a family of 6 for under $2. A pound of pasta cost maybe 40 cents. A large can of tomato sauce cost 50 cents. Some garlic powder and dried oregano made it taste Italian. You boiled the pasta, heated the sauce, combined them in a big bowl, and called everyone to eat. If you had ground beef, you browned it and added it to the sauce. If you didn't, it was meatless, and nobody complained much because full was full. You served it with garlic bread if you had day-old bread and margarine, plain if you didn't. Leftovers lasted for days, tasted better the second time, and could be stretched further by adding more pasta. Spaghetti night was reliable, filling, and universally accepted. Kids ate it willingly. Parents made it constantly, and budgets survived because of it. The simplicity was the point. Carbs, tomatoes, seasoning, done. Number 1. Government cheese. Government cheese was not just food, it was survival, and it was free. It came in a giant, nondescript cardboard box, stamped like military surplus. Inside was a solid orange brick that could survive a nuclear blast. You could slice it, melt it, fry it, and it would still taste like school lunch in desperation. It never quite melted right, stuck to pans, clumped in sandwiches, turned casseroles into rubber. But when you had nothing else, it was gold. It made grilled cheese, made macaroni edible, and lasted forever in the fridge. Every poor kid in the 1970s remembers peeling back that thin paper and trying to cut a straight slice. You never got it right, always crooked, but that cheese kept you full, and that mattered more than anything. This wasn't grocery store cheese. It was government-issued food safety net, part of a national aid program. For many families, it was the difference between dinner and no dinner. It showed up uninvited, unbranded, and unforgettable. When it was gone, you missed it, even if you pretended not to. The cheese distribution programs emerged from agricultural surplus, a way to support dairy farmers while feeding the poor. These days, people pay top dollar for vintage processed cheese. Back then, it came free, and you still felt the cost. Government cheese wasn't just the cheapest option. It was the lifeline that kept families together during the hardest times America faced. What do you think about how prices have changed since the 1970s? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to click the cards on screen for more.